Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Planted Unearthed. My name's Sam Peters and I'm one of the co-founders of Planted, the first contemporary design show aimed at reconnecting cities with nature. As part of the Planted Unearthed series, we've been exploring how design, sustainability, food production, architecture and nature can combine to create cleaner, greener, healthier spaces. We're looking in depth at how we can reconnect with nature by speaking to some of the most innovative and respected thinkers in this field. Today we're talking to the commercial director of Vestre, one of the world's most progressive furniture manufacturers and a standard bearer for sustainable production and design. Vestre, who partnered with Planted when we launched our physical event at King's Cross in September, have embarked on an ambitious new project which they say will deliver the most sustainable furniture factory anywhere on the planet. The Norwegian furniture manufacturer also promotes the citizen's right to roam, something ingrained in Scandinavian culture, but not in many other parts of the world. To discuss these topics and more besides, I'm delighted to welcome Romy Rawlings to Planted Unearthed. Romy, welcome.
Thanks, Sam.
It's lovely to have you here, and thank you again for all the support you gave us as part of the Planted physical launch just about a month ago. You know, how are things going for you guys? How's the sort of continuing pandemic playing out in terms of from a business perspective?
Well, we're all stuck at home working, as most people are. My two colleagues are in London, so they're under more controls than I am at the moment anyway. But we're keeping really busy. It's a strange time, definitely, and not exactly the year we planned, but actually it's been going okay for business. And I think, sadly, some of the difficulties that we've had in the market over the last 6 months are going well for us, which sounds an awful thing to say, but we've been well placed to pick up on some of the green recovery that's going ahead. So, you know, that's great in a sense.
I mean, that green recovery, perhaps for the uninitiated, why would that play relatively well for you guys? I mean, could you tell us a little bit about the origins of the business and what you stand for?
Sure. Vestre is 73 years old this year, and it was set up by our current CEO's grandfather, so it's very much a family-owned business, and headquarters in Oslo, as you said, a Norwegian company, but we manufacture also in Sweden, and we have colleagues now here in the UK, in Berlin, and 3-4 people now in the States. We've just taken on somebody else on the West Coast with 3 in New York. So growing globally year on year and doing really well, actually. We're seeing huge growth. Yeah, the products we manufacture are all for external use, very long lasting outdoor furniture, street furniture really. So for the uninitiated, that means benches, litter bins, cycle stands, planters, those kinds of products that you will see on streets everywhere, but probably walk past most of the time. And we're finding that the focus on outdoors, particularly this year, for the obvious reasons of COVID, have meant that people are turning more and more to these sorts of projects to bring people outside, whether it's for eating or recreation or just meeting places. So seating and tables and those sorts of products are actually in very high demand at the moment.
And I mean, in terms of sustainable production, I mean, some talk about a litter bin, for example. Some people might not be able to, well, understandably kind of work out how you could create or manufacture a litter bin sustainably. What is a sustainable litter bin?
Well, it goes for all of our furniture. I think it's not broken down into any particular area. The vast majority of our products are manufactured out of mild steel and timber. Bins are all mild steel, and then they are hot dip galvanized, may or may not be powder coated to give them some color. So all of our production really revolves around mostly those two materials. And in terms of sustainability, there are many interlinked reasons for us aiming to be as sustainable as we are. The products we use are really high quality, very durable. We offer really lengthy warranties, and that's particularly important actually with litter bins. You can imagine the sort of thing that gets thrown in them. You know, Coca-Cola, for instance, is really corrosive. So if you don't have good protection, then they're failing and falling apart pretty quickly. So actually a litter bin is a pretty good test of quality and durability. And actually all of that goes hand in hand with sustainability, because if we're using less resources and manufacturing fewer products, we're not utilizing resources at the speed that maybe other manufacturers are. And we just can't keep building things and making things at the rate that we have been for the last 50 years or so. We have to slow down, and all of the resources that are left to us now globally are precious. And we really need to have that approach, which is the approach we have. We try and minimize our impact and minimize our production as far as we can. And through many, many ways, from design right through to logistics, we look very carefully at that and analyze our impact. And so we've been carbon neutral now in production for 10 years. So it's not a new thing to us. It's absolutely embedded in everything the business does.
When we set up Planted, first imagined what Planted might be, which was going back to about 3 years ago. One of the questions we asked, if we went into this, what was at the time quite an unknown world for us of sustainable production, sustainable manufacture and design, would there be enough brands and businesses out there who were really genuinely exploring this space? And certainly the name that kept coming up to us and was Vestre, and along with other UK brands, perhaps like Benchmark, another country, these kind of brands who've sort of grown kind of from the bottom up with sustainability at the forefront of the business. But the longer we're involved, the more it seems that Scandinavian brands are really consistently, not always, of course, but some of the sort of standard bearers tend to be Scandinavian. What is it about Scandinavian culture, indeed sort of Scandinavian design, that lends itself to a more sustainable way of manufacturing?
Ooh, I think it's pretty complex. I think there are a number of reasons. There's a real sort of transparency to everything Scandinavian businesses and people actually do. And I think that's important to them, that they don't hide behind information and bamboozle with anything. It's absolutely laid bare. So I think that helps. That approach certainly helps. I think, for instance, in Norway, I know the sort of protection and the social support network that's available. And as actually also in Sweden, it encourages new thinkers. It encourages people to try something different. You can take 6 months sabbatical to start your own business. And lots of startups, I mean, Minecraft, Spotify, there are lots of really interesting startups that have come out of Scandinavia, because it enables people to think differently and be brave. And I think that fundamentally is important. Scandinavian design is very pared back and minimalistic generally. So actually there is a lesser use of resources, just because you're not adding fancy details and trim and, those sorts of aspects for the sake of it. So I think there are a number of reasons. It's just somehow embedded. And then you've got very pragmatic reasons. In Norway and in all of our production, wherever it is, we use only renewable energy, and that's possible in those countries. In Norway, it's from hydroelectric power. So it's clean energy. It's been available for many years there. And that makes a huge difference to our production impact right from the start, without doing anything else. Just utilizing green energy is the start of that. So I think there are all kinds of different reasons, but they all come together, thankfully, to enable this approach. And I think also there's, for us certainly, and I guess for anybody following this path, there's a lack of compromise. There's never any willingness to compromise on quality or durability or sustainability, because they do go hand in hand. So it's actually quite easy, if there are decisions to be made, that is always foremost. So it's not that hard when you set those sorts of ambitions and goals. And we've set ourselves the ambition of being the world's most sustainable manufacturer of outdoor furniture. Well, you can't hide behind anything once you set that. You know,
Yeah.
you can't say, oh, but yes, on this occasion, actually, we're going to use tropical hardwood because it's FSC and that's fine. We just, it's actually very easy because we just don't do things like that. We don't even have debates about it. It's just decisions that are made and we all understand and we act in that manner.
It is really interesting, isn't it? It's certainly a sort of journey that we're on as well. But if you make bold public statements, you've got to live and die by them essentially, and you will be held up to scrutiny, and rightly so, you know, because otherwise it's just smoke and mirrors and PR, I guess. So it's a very interesting and difficult space to enter for many people, but obviously so important when we look around us and understand, you know, just how these resources are being used and how precious they are, which you've obviously highlighted there. I mean, I mentioned at the top of the interview, Romy, that you are in the process, or you were beginning this journey of building what you say will be the most sustainable furniture furniture manufacturing factory in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Where is it? Why can you make that claim? And yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So it's going to be called, well, it is called the Plus because it's shaped like a cross, a plus sign. And actually it's now on site. I think it's been on site a few weeks. They've been removing trees, clearing the space. And when I say removing trees, as few as possible. And the reason for that is that it's in the middle, fairly deep sort of Norwegian forest, quite close to the Norwegian-Swedish border, a place called Magnor. And initially this was a site that was going to be completely clear felled, big typical industrial site, typical industrial sheds. Our neighbour is Hydro, a big Norwegian manufacturer of aluminium, so one of their plants is very close by, and they were going to sort of continue with this idea on the site to start building those sorts of production facilities. And what happened was our CEO is completely visionary about these sorts of things, and our factories have always been designed by leading architects. So our current one in Torsby in Sweden was designed by Snøhetta, internally and externally, Norwegian architects. And now this one has been designed by Bjarke Engels in Copenhagen. And it doesn't look like any factory you've ever seen. I mean, you have Google Vestre the Plus and you'll find the website. It's sort of nestled in the forest. And when I mentioned before about transparency, literally, I would think more than half of the whole area of walls is glazed so that people can see into production. There's very little that's hidden away. And that's very deliberate. It's all part of the approach. But it's a beautiful building. I mean, it had to be to fit with our design ethos and everything that goes hand in hand with that. But it's obviously a fully, fully mobile production unit, and there's all sorts of reasons why it will be as sustainable as it is. We're aiming for BREEAM Outstanding, and I think something like 2% of buildings globally of this type might manage to achieve that. It's a tiny number, so that's a really challenging target for us to meet. It's reducing the energy we use, the water we use. It's reducing our impact massively, and we've tried to adhere to the Paris Agreement, which was that we would reduce our impact by 40% in terms of what we do in manufacturing. And actually there's a more stringent requirement by the Norwegian government to reduce it by 50%. So it's completely in line with that, and actually sort of future-proofing, if you like, for immensely increased production over the next 5 to 10 years for us, but actually reducing our impact as far as we possibly can. So do have a look. I mean, it's every aspect of it actually is fascinating, from the sort of transparency to we'll be using self-learning robots, as automated as it can be to reduce, again, energy consumption and waste and all of those aspects. So it's going to be absolutely state of the art and open to visitors. We think possibly end of next year. It's only about a year in build, which is in itself astonishing, really. definitely within 18 months. And we would be very glad to accept people there. And there's lots to see. There's a visitor centre, and, you know, that's to bring people in as well and help to understand our philosophy and teach, actually. Again, that's very Scandinavian, I think. Share that learning, share that knowledge, enable others to take the same steps and do better. There's no hiding away of trade secrets. You know, it is designed to be a learning facility and share that for the greater good, really.
I was just going to ask that question. Presumably, you know, by doing this, you're also hoping other brands and other businesses can follow and fit in and start manufacturing in the same way. I mean, it's so someone's got to start, haven't they, really?
Absolutely. I think it is about that. It's proving that you can. And we're not a large company at all globally. You know, our impact is tiny, but that's not the point. You know, we believe that everybody can do something. You know, we can't all do everything. So it's making those impacts wherever we can and as much as we can. And yes, encouraging others to do the same. And it's really important. We don't have a lot of time. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. So we want to prove it is possible to be successful financially, well thought of in design terms, produce beautiful furniture, all of those things that people want. But, you know, we don't have to destroy the planet in the ways that we have been in many ways for many years as an industry. So it's about sort of showing the way, I guess, more than anything.
That's really interesting. And I mean, we talked a little bit about Scandinavian culture and what sort of lends itself to sustainable design. And also we talked at the top of the programme as well. I mentioned this idea about the right to roam, which Vestre are keen to promote. You certainly got a sort of statement about it on your website. For us at Planted, we are all about reconnecting with nature, and this is an increasingly interesting kind of area for us. Where you can and can't go in the UK, because we're based in the UK. But perhaps could you tell us why this is something that you're interested in at Vestre, and perhaps again talking about the kind of more broad Scandinavian culture. It seems to be something that is absolutely part and parcel of living in that part of the world.
Yeah, you're avoiding saying the word, I think, Sam. Yeah. I'll go for it. Allemansretten in Norwegian, yeah, which means right
Easy
to roam.
To say. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the principle, and it is deeply embedded really in all of Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. This right to roam and use of even private spaces, even privately owned gardens and grounds, if you want access through to a lake or a forest, as long as you're respectful and you try and keep out of sight and you leave everything as you found it and don't damage nature. That's the principle, and it's key in forests, and obviously there's a lot of open areas within Scandinavia, and it allows people to walk wherever they like, to camp pretty much wherever they like. You know, there aren't the restrictions that there are in this country on wild open spaces. Actually, I believe it's pretty much the same in Scotland. When I've spoken to people there, they have a very, very similar principles. So it's not just Scandinavia by any means. And the importance of that is embedded in legislation. But what we see for what we do now more and more is in public-private areas. So like King's Cross, where we exhibited last month, as you were saying. I can't believe that's only a month ago. But, you know, these areas that you think are public space, and they're actually not. They're privately owned and quite tightly controlled. And for us, that starts to creep into areas of behaviour and what's allowed and what's not allowed. So you see examples of hostile architecture here and in the United States and other places, probably more than anywhere, which are almost completely unknown in Scandinavia. Putting skateboards, anti-skate studs on furniture on the edge of seating, or putting an intermediate armrest on a park bench that's only there to stop somebody sleeping, to stop rough sleeping. So actually,
that is
No, my colleagues had never heard of it either.
Of that, but what a horrible, horrible concept that is. It's never
Yeah.
crossed my mind why they would be there. How interesting.
That's
Wow.
exactly why they're there
Yeah.
in many,
Yeah.
many instances. And actually, you know, to have armrests for accessibility and inclusivity and mobility, that's absolutely fine. They are really needed by many people to help get up and down off a seat. That's absolutely fine. But it's very clear when they're being specified for that, and when they're being specified with the sole purpose of stopping somebody sleeping on it. And you're preventing the most vulnerable members of society from actually even just lying on a bench instead of in the wet somewhere. So yeah, so for us it's actually really important in that sense. It's not just about roaming around in beautiful places in the countryside. It starts to impact on the areas where we work, in our cities, in our towns, in our neighborhoods, where these measures to prevent antisocial behavior, so-called, are taken. And yeah, it slips by most people. And it's another area where we don't compromise. We don't do that. We could add armrests for that function, and you know, you could argue that they're needed for accessibility, but we just don't do that. So we do have some very difficult conversations about it with clients here. But again, it's the right thing.
I was just going to say, you know, and again, you know, as we at Planted kind of learn and look to learn from brands like yourself who are so much further down the path in many ways, but you know, it's when you start to go on this journey, you do realize that it presents challenges at every stage if you're trying to be a force for good and trying to actually affect change in some ways, and how you bring people with you, but also make difficult commercial decisions. But I think, as you said early on, you know, if you make that decision at the start, you have to, you know, the decisions kind of make themselves in some ways, I guess. But that whole idea that you've just described is a kind of light bulb moment for me, because I've often wondered, when you sit on the park bench, why would you have a rest in the middle when you've got armrests on the side? But that makes so much sense. But and it's also slightly depressing, may I say. And
sorry about that.
but also thank you for the information and education, because you know, again, so many of these things you'll walk past and most people would never ever consider why these things have been put in place. But I think that's an area we need to look more at with Planted. But I mean, more broadly, that right to roam, again, just going back to that, I mean, why would Vestre kind of look to make a statement about that on the website? Why would you look to sort of publicly promote that from a kind of business perspective? Where do you see the value in a sort of, you know, virtuous but bold call as well? What are you trying to achieve in that?
I think many of the actions we take and the statements that we make are actually around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that's one of them, along with several others. So everything we do, we have 9 of the 17 embedded in our business plan. So whether that's quality education or life on land or sustainable cities and communities, which clearly is what we're talking about now, when you start to look at the detail of some of those SDGs, it is about creating inclusive environments, not leaving anybody behind. And when you look at our cities, then it ties absolutely to not putting an armrest on a seat. You know, you get down to that level of detail. We're running a webinar series ourselves around the SDGs, because I think a lot of people struggle to understand what they actually mean and how they can be used and what impacts they can have. So we talk about 9 SDGs in our business plan, and that's almost meaningless. But then when you look at the website, there are these details about the areas in which we work. And it's not all about giving money to an overseas project in a developing country. You know, it can be about giving employment to 3 guys in Oslo who were unemployed, and making meaningful change and bringing them back into society. So there are many, many ways in which we work. And I think allemannsretten and refusing hostile architecture is one of them. It sits hand in hand with our approach, which is always inclusive, and this is Scandinavian again, I guess, the sort of social democratic view, inclusive. Good design should be for everybody, as IKEA stands for, you know, all of those principles. You can't really break it down. It's a holistic view, and you know, we can't stop doing one part of that because it will have an impact on somewhere else. So that's how we see it, and making these statements makes it clearer to ourselves, and then hopefully also to our customers. Because, you know, when you start to get into the detail of armrests on benches, I mean, I've been working in street furniture now for 13 years, so I get all of those details. I get that litter bins are actually the most complex thing to design of everything we do, probably. But very, very few people think like that. It's, you know, we are a niche of a niche of a niche in our industry. I completely understand that. You know, you start to think about Scandinavian designed litter bins, it's ridiculous. But, you know, we have to be kind of passionate about the details that we own.
Absolutely.
And our approach to even those. So I think it just goes hand in hand with our philosophy. And it does, again, it makes it very easy, really. They are tough commercial decisions. I have to walk away from certain projects because we can't and won't do what we're being asked to do. And of course that has a commercial knock-on. And these days, you know, you're loath to bring anything like that to bear because you don't know what's going to happen around the corner. But again, it makes it easy because I have no choice and I willingly accept that decision myself, you know, so you just don't even enter into a debate. It's just the way it is.
Well, I love the fact that we're at Planted speaking to you on such a level of detail, and because it's a huge journey of learning for everyone. As I say, we're huge fans of you guys. It's a fantastic brand. It was really interesting for us speaking to Marcus Fairs, the editor-in-chief of Design, when we interviewed him and on site at King's Cross. And I'm not even sure he knew he was sitting on a Vestre chair, but when we asked him which brand he held in the sort of highest regard for their sustainable production and everything they stand for, he named you guys as that brand. So that's a great position to be in. You know, you're certainly doing a great job of educating, but also producing wonderful quality design-led products for the outdoors, which don't damage the planet, and long may that continue. And we're very grateful for the support you've given us at Planted, Romy, that's for sure. So, you know, thank you for your time today, and we're looking forward to working with you on projects in the future for sure.
Yeah, very much the same. You know, we're very pleased to be involved in you and from the beginning and support the launch, and looking forward to next year. So, you know, we're very careful about our partnerships, and this is great to be involved in. So we're more than happy. And yeah, the Design sort of accolade was great. We caught up with that this week. So really nice to hear.
No, that's great. Thank you, Romy. Well, that just leaves it for me to say, if you've enjoyed today's series of Planted Unearthed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, details of which can be found on our website, www.planted-cities.co.uk. On there, you'll find more great content, including our 3-part Planted Unplugged Talks programme, led by myself and Oliver Heath, which we filmed live at King's Cross as part of London Design Festival last month. Look out also for interviews with Stefan and Nick from Dodds & Shoot, as well as Mark Tremlett from Natural Mat, and much more high-quality content. That just leaves it for me to say thanks again to Romy from Vestre. Thanks to you for watching. My name's Sam Peters, and this has been Planted Unearthed.